Good afternoon. Welcome to Politics and the Pulpit here on your hometown station, KHTS AM 1220 and 98.1 FM. It is your holy host today, Pastor Jerry Cook. Good to be with you today, your irreverent reverend. And I am excited about our show today. We've had a great couple of weeks talking about critical race theory. Last week we talked about the possibility of being both pro-life as well as pro-death penalty. Can those two things still stand? Are they mutually exclusive? I think we covered our bases there, and judging from the emails, I can tell that I made some sort of an impact. Well, obviously we've had a lot of news over the last couple of days, and I just was scrolling through the right-wing sites, and I noticed that President Trump is going to be suing CNN for defamation. I know that's going to be a really long slog and probably will need a lot of prayer and luck, but I doubt that that is going to be successful. But hey, why not give it a try? Also, I found out that there was a whistleblower for the Hunter Biden laptop, but obviously that's not getting as much play as whistleblowers in the prior administration. But hey, obviously, we know we have fair journalism today. Let me tell you a few things before we get into the show today. If you are interested in coming to the Freedom's Way Baptist Church, I encourage you to look at freedomswaybaptistchurch.com. We are located in Santa Clarita. I've been serving the Santa Clarita Valley for 20 years. It's been my privilege to have started our church and just celebrated 20 years this year. We have a wonderful school called Lighthouse Christian Academy. And if you're interested in putting your kid in a non-state-run school that is going to teach them biblical values and give them a love for country, and basically, you know, the stuff that you guys grew up with, reading, writing, and arithmetic, then I encourage you to look at our website and check out Lighthouse Christian Academy and give our school administrator a call, Christine, who will be eager to take your phone calls and have your kids come. Also, we got a few upcoming things happening here at the church as well. On August 28th, just a few weeks away, we have our Meet the Candidates Sunday, and we'll have candidates, both state and local candidates there. We are still in the process of trying to get Brian Dolly, who is running for governor against Gavin Newsom. Once that gets established, I'll let you know, but we've got Underwood coming, who is running for lieutenant governor, Mark Moiser, Lonnie Chen, and several local delegates here running for the state of California. So I'd encourage you to come out to that. August 28th, we'll be running a commercial for that here in the next couple of weeks, and encourage you to come out and meet some of those local candidates. Also, just on another note here, on September 26th, we've got our Fall Preachers Fellowship that we host every year, and I encourage you to come out and hear good preaching. That is a Monday night, 5:30 for dinner and 7 o'clock for the main speaking. And so I'd encourage you to come out to that Fall Preachers Fellowship. Our focus this year is going to be on the importance of preaching Christ in California. So many preachers and so many folks in general have fled the state, mainly thinking that they could leave the liberalism behind. The fact is, there are plenty of preachers here that are willing to be behind enemy lines and to preach the gospel and to maintain a good, solid, Bible-believing voice here in the state of California. If everybody ran away, we just wouldn't have a Bible-believing voice here in the state of California. So thank God for those preachers who have stuck it out and are continuing to stick it out. It is my pleasure today to welcome a guest in our studio. Dr. Bill Grady is a gentleman that I've known for a great many years. I had the privilege of hearing Dr. Bill Grady back in the mid-1990s as he came to our home church in Norwalk, California, and he was preaching on his second book that he had put out called What Hath God Wrought? Dr. Bill Grady has been in the ministry for a great many years. I'll let him speak to that here in just a few moments. But Dr. Bill Grady is the author of several books, and I'll give you just a few. Final Authority is the first one. It's a defense of the King James Bible. I encourage you to get that. What Hath God Wrought, which the aforementioned book that I just mentioned. Holy Ground, which is a huge thesis on Israel, 800-plus pages, including endnotes. It's a great resource for those of you out there that want to know more about Israel and the biblical basis for that. How Satan Turned America Against God. We're going to talk a little bit about that book today, and of course his most recent book called Perilous Times, Deep Truths for Shallow Waters. Dr. Bill Grady, it's good to have you here today on Politics in the Pulpit. Say hello to the Santa Clarita Valley.
Hello, Santa Clarita Valley. I'm privileged to be here, Pastor Cook.
Dr. Bill Grady, how did you come to faith in Jesus Christ? Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to know Christ as your Savior?
Yes, sir. I was born in New York City in 1952 in Lenox Hill Hospital, and grew up in the strictest Catholic tradition. The most famous Roman Catholic in the history of America, Cardinal Francis Spellman. And they used to call his New York office the Little Vatican during the Cold War years. He signed my grade school diploma in 1966. So I graduated from the largest Catholic high school in Delaware. Joe Biden says he graduated from the second largest Catholic high school in Delaware. Went to fight Trump behind the gym. That's Archmere Academy. I graduated from Salesianum across town, 1,200 all-boys school, and graduated there in 1970, and went to the University of Delaware, and then I went to sell cash registers. After leaving the college, I smoked marijuana until I was half dead, just a hippie. And I quit and went to work selling cash registers in 1971. 1972, I sold Jill Biden, of all crazy coincidences, and her husband, uh, Bill Stevenson. They were Bill and Jill Stevenson. They owned the Stone Balloon nightclub in Newark, Delaware, and it was the #1 nightclub in the country for a while, and Stone Balloon magazine voted it the best kept secret in rock and roll. I sold them their cash registers at 19. I wasn't old enough to drink in the place, and but then a few years later, they'd known them as Bill and Jill. Then it became Joe and Jill, and she's playing footsies with Senator Biden behind her husband's back. And Bill Stevenson is putting out a tell-all book this year about those shenanigans. The bottom line is, you steal a man's wife, you'll steal an election. And once a crook, always a crook. But so Jill Biden was one of my customers, as crazy as it is. But then I went on to work for BOAC in Manhattan, 245 Park Avenue, and became British Airways shortly afterwards, and with a merger with BEA. And I went to work in Philadelphia with a promotion, and that's how I was saved. I was driving to the Philadelphia airport in 1974, looking for news, and just like you're reaching out with this radio ministry, I was driving in Philadelphia traffic and picked up a 15-minute broadcast from the Marcus Hook Baptist Church. I'd never, seen a Catholic Bible, much less a King James or a Protestant Bible. But listening on the radio, 15 minutes a day, I was drawn into the church. And my second visit there, I accepted the Lord as my Savior, and found out that my good works couldn't save me. And I repudiated 100% my Catholic background. And 6 months later, I got called to preach. So I've been in the ministry now since 1974.
So I was going to ask you how long you've been in the ministry. So 48 years.
Mm-hmm.
48 years. And let me ask you this question. Would you say that you have been steadily working for the Lord for 48 years? Or give us a little bit of context there, because I know some of that was evangelism, and you had some pastoring in your background. So
Yes, sir. I took off like a rocket, because Catholic people, they're taught so much baloney really growing up, and when they ever hear the truth, it just it blows their mind, and they just can't believe they'd been fooled so bad. So they dig in. I started studying and reading like crazy, but I got called to preach in a missions conference in October of 1974. And by 1976, I went off to Bible college in the Midwest. I was there 5 years with my wife, and we had 3 children born. And in 1981, I went to the state of Idaho to start my first of 2 churches. And we bought 20 acres of ground, built a beautiful 6,000 square foot church building. And then after 5 years, I was called back to my school. Crazy welcome back Carter. I came back to teach at my alma mater, trained 400 preacher boys, as they call them, a semester for 10 straight years. And after that, I went on the road full time as an evangelist for 10 years, having written the first 2 books that you mentioned, Final Authority and What Hath God Wrought. And then after doing that for 10 years, I went to Michigan to start my second church outside of Flint. I was there 9 years, Macedonia Baptist Church. And after that, the Lord called me back on the road, and I've been on the road since 2016, 17-ish. Now basically circulating 6 books now on the road.
yeah.
And I have a good network of preachers that I've come to know over the years.
Out of all the books you've written, Dr. Grady, what would you consider to be your favorite book?
Boy, that's a hard question.
Other than saying the Bible, of course.
Yeah.
But books you've written.
Well, Charles Haddon Spurgeon, the famous pastor, said, visit many books, but live in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny, every time I write a new one, I think it's the most important. I think the current book, Perilous Times, is an emergency type of a book for people to get into, to help them to understand what's happening. The How Satan Turned America Against God book, good night, the one you're interested in talking about today, that's a conspiracy primer. Mm-hmm. I may disappoint some of your listeners, but I think we went to the moon. I think the world is round. I think Sandy Hook shooting was real. But I have a 900-page book here on legitimate conspiracies.
Yeah.
The deep state. The man that invented the neutron bomb, Sam Cohen, lives in Brentwood here. We became good friends because a senator in Oklahoma, Charles Key, kind of got us together. And Sam Cohen worked on the atom bomb in 1943 and 44 and 45, and the bomb dropped on Nagasaki. Invented the neutron bomb in 1958. Lived right here in Brentwood. I preached out here once in Long Beach and went to visit him in person. But we were phone pals for 7 years. And he wrote the afterword to my book, and he's not even a Christian. He's a Jew, and he's an atheist. But the book is pro-Israel. And he wanted to help me get this out. And so I got to plug in USA Today, believe it or not, because of his endorsement. So I really loved that book because of so many unusual things in it. But then the book I wrote on Israel, it was 18,000 hours, 6 years, 10 hours a day, Holy Ground, the True History of the State of Israel. I love that book. The book, What Hath God Wrought? I had letters from Jesse Helms and Judge Roy Moore and tons of people that have gotten that book. Sean Hannity has a copy of it. I don't know if he's read it. Preacher friend of mine in Long Island handed him a copy. So I love them all, but the new book is very critical, Preacher, Perilous Times.
Well, I'm excited about talking about that book here in a little bit, but I want to tell the listening audience that Dr. Grady has a very unique, not only a unique writing style, but a unique speaking style. He'll be at Freedom's Way Baptist Church tonight at 7 p.m. speaking for our church. And if you don't have a home church or you're just curious about another church, I encourage you to come out tonight and listen to Dr. Grady. And he has a unique writing style. I think you'll agree with me that he can't say much unless it's about 300 pages or more. So he's going to have to, he's a very wordy guy, but the good thing is there's a lot of context, there's a lot of footnotes, and there's a lot of supporting. We were just talking a little bit today at lunch how sometimes Christians can be some of the most, some of the silliest people in the world when it comes to misinformation and things of that nature. And Dr. Grady, you'd agree with me that for a people that happens to have the greatest book on information, we should be the least people to be spreading disinformation. Would you agree?
Well, Peter Jennings said, if you hear a rumor your mother loves you, check it out.
I agree. I think my mother loved me, but anyway, let me ask you this question, Dr. Grady. Considering you've been in the ministry for 48 years and you've had the privilege of seeing churches start, seeing them in perpetuity, seeing them close down, Proverbs chapter 27, verse 23 states this: Be thou diligent to know the state of thy flocks, and look well to thy herds. What is your current assessment of the state of the church right now in 2022? And I'm sure that Perilous Times deals with this, specifically as it relates to how the church responded to the whole COVID situation over the last couple of years. I know you've been steadily busy preaching in many churches, probably more than most itinerant evangelists get to preach in. But what was your take on the response within broader evangelicalism, and more specifically to our group of preachers?
Well, most evangelists during 2020 and 2021 were either committing suicide or trying to get a church to pastor. It was brutal. A very good friend of mine, you know him, Sam Gipp, evangelist, he said he only had 16 meetings in 2020. Now, I was very spoiled. I was beyond spoiled. I was in 92 churches in 2020 and 107 in 2021.
And I was one of them.
You were. So I've been blessed. And the reason I was that way, that was real, I think, is that I've said in my new book, the crowd that I run with didn't. The crowd that I run with didn't. So none of these folks closed their churches. Now, some of the best ones closed for a week or two at the most. They had no clue what was happening. And some of them closed a little longer than that and then recovered. And in my new book, I try to give some of those guys a little bit of slack because I use the illustration of Gideon's son, Jether. Gideon told him to kill Zalmud, I think his name was, fall on him. And he couldn't do it because he was a youth. And his father had to slay the guy.
Yeah.
And I used that analogy that a lot of these pastors living in latte land, Starbucks country, they've never seen real persecution like our forefathers did.
Sure.
And this was their baptism of fire, all of a sudden being confronted by the government for the first time. And they couldn't handle it. And many of them that folded have now since said never again.
Yeah.
Like the Jewish officers in IDF, and they take their oath of allegiance on top of Masada.
Sure.
Masada shall never fall again.
Yeah.
So a lot of the churches, there's two things. It's like closing ranks. There are guys that are really dedicated to standing, like you said, not leaving California. They're closing ranks and pulling closer together. A much larger number, I'm afraid, are fading off the scene.
Yeah.
And the good news is that when you read 2 Timothy 3 and 4, Paul lays out conditions for the last days, the way it's going to be. And chapter 4, verse 3 says, the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine. Didn't say they won't believe it, they won't endure it. So they're just pulling away, and they're being pragmatic. That's the American way. And to keep my church, I've got to do what the government says and cater to the people, and I don't want to take the risk of persecution. So more and more there's a divide going, and it's a smaller remnant now that are sticking in and digging in.
I've got a theory, and I'm not terribly certain if it's true, but the Bible talks about a great falling away. I've suggested that a part of that probably started March of 2020. Seems like that falling away. I understand the whole apostasy thing. I understand the Greek word, all that kind of stuff. But there's some people that, their last day at church was March 15th, 2020, and they still haven't stepped foot into the building in 2 years.
Sure it is.
And so it's a falling away. Let's just throw out a number. Let's say a third of people that were originally in church 2 years ago, they're not in church today.
Absolutely.
And who knows? I mean, again, it's just a little theory here, but
I agree with you.
Little falling away, And
the day of the Lord shall not come except there first be a falling away.
Yeah, and so there's still some people that were with me 2 years ago that are not with me today, and haven't stepped foot into a building. And it is what it is, I guess. But anyway, Dr. Grady, we'll talk more here in a little bit on the second hour of the second half of the show, I should say. We're only on for 1 hour, folks, so don't get too excited out there. But you're listening to Pastor Jerry Cook, your irreverent reverend, here on Politics in the Pulpit. Again, thank you very much for listening in. We're going to have Dr. Bill Grady on the other side of the break here. And again, you're at 98.1 FM and AM 1220 KHTS, your hometown station. Catch you in a minute.
This is Bradley from Santa Clarita Grocery, the all-volunteer grocery program serving children, families, and individuals experiencing food insecurities. Since January 2020, Santa Clarita Grocery has distributed 83 tons of fresh groceries to 4,465 families in the SCV. Santa Clarita Grocery is a drive-up, drive-through service with physical distancing in place to continue serving our community. If you are in need or looking for a charity to do the most good for our community, please consider partnering with us by donating to Santa Clarita Grocery, one of the most efficient charities in the Santa Clarita Valley. A full 99 cents out of every dollar goes directly back to the community. Santa Clarita Grocery operates on a 1% overhead and is sustained through private donations. Santa Clarita Grocery is at 21176 Center Point Parkway in the Oasis Furniture parking lot. Please visit our website, santaclaritagrocery.org, or Facebook at Santa Clarita Grocery to make a difference in our awesome town community. 661-425-7575. Be our guest and experience the difference.
The KHTS Home and Garden Show is now accepting vendors for our 12th annual event on Saturday, April 29th and Sunday, April 30th, 2023 at Central Park. Get in front of 20,000 Santa Clarita homeowners. Join over 400 vendors at our Valley's biggest trade show. Hurry, space is filling up fast for certain categories. Many vendors call our show the best use of their marketing dollars. To register, visit scvhomeshow.com. Admission and parking are free. scvhomeshow.com.
Many families face a new challenge. Childcare has forced one parent out of the workforce. Otter has created a solution. Otter is a child care marketplace that connects Santa Clarita parents who need child care with stay-at-home parents who can care for your kids alongside their own. Otter unlocks the ability for those parents to earn money and provide badly needed child care for our valley. Otter connects you with your neighbors. Register for free at withotter.com. Withotter.com. Otter, childcare that feels like family.
Hometown, your hometown station.
Back to Politics and the Pulpit here on your hometown station, 98.1 FM and 1220 AM, your hometown station. Just want to make sure you guys are alive out there. Good to be back with you. This second half, we're going to be continuing our conversation with Dr. Bill Grady, the author of Final Authority, What Hath God Wrought, Holy Ground, How Satan Turned America Against God, and his most recent book, Perilous Times. If you're interested in getting one of these books, I'd encourage you to go online to Grady Publications. That is Grady, Grady Publications, and take a look at some of those books there. You can get them on Kindle as well as hardback and softback, of course. And I encourage you to go online there and grab those books. I'm sure Dr. Grady will enjoy having a little bit of gas money, especially these days. Dr. Grady, what was your thought November of 2020? When all the returns were coming in, or did you have a chance to actually watch the returns, or were you maybe speaking that night, or what was your take that evening?
I was awake watching it, and I felt certain that President Trump was going to prevail. When Biden couldn't get a crowd of 20 people in a parking lot and Trump's stadiums are sold out, we all know the same things we watched. Mm-hmm. And when all those numbers stopped being tabulated and all of a sudden the jumps took place, it was beyond mind-boggling.
Yeah.
I was just stunned.
You know, it's funny, the great Rush Limbaugh, who passed away last year, was talking about an article that Axios, or one of those left-wing outlets, put out maybe about 2 months before the November election. And the title of the article, I think, was called The Red Mirage. The Red Mirage. And the whole point of the article was the journalist was trying to somehow calm the concerns of the Democrat who would go to sleep that night on election night with all that red, that sea of red in the United States, thinking, don't worry, that's a mirage, because over time, this is exactly how the article went, over time those red states would be colored in blue. It's kind of funny how they were kind of almost predicting what they knew was going to happen in this article almost 30, 40 days before the actual election.
Sure. Again,
called the Red Mirage. If you're doubting me out there in Radio Land, look it up. Call the Red Mirage. I think it's either Axios or one of those left-wing outlets put it out, and you can read it yourself. But I remember the night very well because my wife and I were watching the returns, and I still remember the moment when they said that those three states were going to, I think Michigan, Pennsylvania, and one other, were going to stop counting for the night. And of course, if you go on some of these fact checkers, you know, they're going to have their little excuse for what that meant. But I was watching it live.
Yeah, I was too.
And it was almost like, you know, the moon landing deniers. You know, someone was in there in 1968, 1969 watching the actual landing, and now 60 years later they're telling you, well, that didn't really happen. No, I was there. I watched it. My wife and I looked at each other and said, they're going to take this thing, you know. And so, anyway, regardless of all that, I think we all know that. I've covered that pretty extensively in past shows. Your latest book is called Perilous Times, and of course that's a phrase taken from 1 Timothy, I believe, chapter
2 Timothy 3:1.
2 Timothy 3:1. And why did you write this book? And first of all, why did you call it Perilous Times, Deep Truths for Shallow Waters? And why did you think this book was the third in the three books for understanding the times?
Well, because I've been preaching what those Bible verses say for many years, and now things look like they're coming to a head. Isaiah uses the phrase, the enemy comes in like a flood. Well, you could see after the after the 2020 election and the COVID combination 1-2 punch, it's a tsunami hit this country. Mm-hmm. And I mean, when I was born, the day I was born, Harry Truman was having Thanksgiving dinner in the White House, 1952, November 27th. So I'm old enough to have seen 14 different, well, I don't claim Biden as a president, 13 presidents and resident Biden, and people my age have never seen the country in such bizarre turmoil. There's obviously something going on. And 2,000 years ago, the Apostle Paul wrote down for the Christians that would be alive when the Lord returns what to look for. And he said, "This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come." That word perilous in the Webster's 1828 English Dictionary says dangerous, hazardous, full of great risk. Every Chinaman, every person in India, I don't care where they live on the globe, would sign off on that kind of definition, regardless of if the word was in the Bible or not. So things are getting shook up, and they're beginning now. And the Apostle Paul gives 20 signs to look for to know you're in the last days. The very first sign, verse 2, "This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of their own selfies." Right there. Men shall be lovers of their own selves. That's the first thing Paul told you to look for.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a more self-addicted society than this? Today.
Yeah.
I'm 70 years old.
Yeah.
And then what about the pandemic or a plandemic? Well, sign number 15 says traitors.
Yeah.
13 says false accusers. Well, you saw those two things for 4 years when Mr. Trump was the president.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of activity going on now that, and the deep truths for shallow waters. The subtitle comes from the shipwreck in Acts 27. I have a picture of a painting of that shipwreck in Acts 27, and it's an old symbol or picture of the church age, that voyage. When you get to the end of the church age, people are going to be throwing things overboard to keep the ship going.
Yeah.
They're going to be getting in more shallow water, 20 fathoms, 10 fathoms. And then the fishing is always bad in shallow waters.
And
so
more doctrine gets thrown overboard.
That's exactly right.
And the ship gets lighter and more worthless.
And it ends by crashing.
Absolutely.
That's pretty close where we are tonight.
Absolutely. It is interesting because obviously our desire on the radio program here is to be a light. And one of the things that we wanted to do was kind of have a pithy name for our radio program. Of course, Politics in the Pulpit. I got to give a shout out to who it deserves to, but Joe Messina, running for Hart School Board, said that would be a good name, Politics in the Pulpit. And I remember when we were promoting this show on Facebook and we boosted the post, some of the comments we were getting, from I would consider the more progressive side of things, just going on and about, preachers and politics and how they should stick their nose, keep their business in their own lanes and all that kind of stuff. In your book here, Perilous Times, you have a picture here of Pastor John Leland, who was a Baptist minister, very influential, probably one of the greatest Baptist ministers and one of the most influential Baptist ministers during the founding of our country. He is standing atop a hogshead tobacco barrel. This is March 25th, 1788, and he is personally endorsing James Madison for Orange County delegate to Virginia's State Constitutional Convention in Richmond, Virginia. And you mentioned this is one of the most important contributions of Baptists in American history, which ultimately secured, some years later, the Bill of Rights in 1791. Here's a question I want to ask you, and this is a question that has been posed to me. Pastors and political endorsements, should they or should they not? What say you, Dr. Grady?
Well, we're supposed to stand for right and oppose evil. When the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn, Proverb says. And so you would, if it's the lesser of two evils principle. 1 Timothy 1, chapter 2, Paul, the very first thing Paul told Timothy to do is to pray for the kings and for those that are in authority, that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and honesty. For this is well-pleasing to God, who will have all men to be saved. When you have a government that is favorable to religion or to freedom of faith, you have the ability to get the gospel out. Mm-hmm. That prayer was prayed in 1 Timothy in 65 A.D., and when Paul wrote that in 1 Timothy, he had his head cut off the next year. He didn't see that prayer answered in his lifetime.
Sure.
And one of the deepest truths in that book, Pastor, and I think you read the whole book already, is that it took 1,700, almost 1,800 years for that prayer to be answered. It was answered in 1791 when James Madison honored his pledge to that minister you just mentioned, who helped get the Constitution ratified in Virginia. And then Madison kept his word and brought the Bill of Rights through by 1791. And that's the first time that the Christian church, not in the whole world, but just in some area, which was the development of developing United States, had protection. They've been slaughtered by the Catholic Church for hundreds and hundreds of years. And now they had freedom to preach the gospel. And it all was because of the right political combination of the right men with the right preachers. And that's the main reason we've had the freedom we've had all this time.
Yeah.
One Baptist. And by the way, there's another picture across from the one you referred to. Pastor John Weatherford in Chesterfield County, Virginia, in jail, preaching through the bars of the jail to his congregation in the courtyard. All over Virginia, preachers were locked up like that. And that's where our founding fathers watched these preachers pay the price. They called it denying the prison bounds. And that's what pushed for the concept of freedom of religion. I mean, the Baptists did it, and every other denomination in this country has profited from it. But our heritage is pretty significant, and most people don't know anything about it.
I think a lot of our modern day Christians, it would do them some service if they looked up guys' names like Shubal Stearns, John Leland, John Weatherford, and others.
John Gano baptized George Washington at the
John
end of the
Tribble.
American,
and a few others, and just to see the significance of the preachers of that time, and in particular the Baptist preachers that were very instrumental in the founding of our country. Now, after the next break, I want to talk a little bit more about that Baptist contribution to the founding of our great country, because I don't think many people are aware of just how significant of a role, there's the word I was looking for, that the Baptist had in the founding of our country. I mean, a lot of us know I've covered it here on the program, the Danbury Baptist, of course, pushing back on Thomas Jefferson, and that letter to Thomas Jefferson making sure that there was freedom of conscience and this wall of separation between church and state, which of course we know the progressives have excised that phrase and turned it into something that it's not supposed to be. But we know about the Danbury Baptists, but really a lot of our modern day Christians probably don't know about Shubal Stearns and don't know about John Leland, and really don't know about how significant those men played in the role of the lives of the political men that we read about as our founding fathers today in the 21st century, and how we are providing a disservice to ourselves to not know about it, and also to convey it to our people in the congregations to let them know, hey, these guys did what the left today says we shouldn't be doing. Those guys did it bravely, but yet we capitulate right and left.
Especially if we're threatened with a fine if we don't close our church.
Yeah, really. It's amazing how that works out. But perilous times, deep truths for shallow waters. You say that the closer and closer we get to the Lord's return for the Lord's church, that boat is getting into shallower and shallow waters.
Yeah.
Now, I'm obviously not going to ask you to make any predictions here, but the fact is, why do you think the doctrine of the pre-tribulational rapture gets all of the guff that sometimes that particular eschatological position gets from the theological elites out there?
Well, they want to take the church into the tribulation period because they break down the distinction between the church and the nation of Israel. That's what basic dispensationalism does, is meant to prevent. You must distinguish between the body of Christ and the nation of Israel. The body of Christ came on the scene when the Jews rejected their national Messiah. These Catholic proponents of what you'd call replacement theology passed into the Protestants and now passed down to a lot of the independent Baptists are teaching that the church replaced Israel, that Israel is no longer going to receive the promises that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were given from God, their national heritage in the land of Israel and the preeminent nature of in the world's affairs ultimately that will take place during the millennium. Baptist churches are being told that you're the new Jews, you're the new Israelites, and God is done with the nation of Israel, the physical nation. Well, that's crazy. It's not replacement theology, it's restoration theology.
Yeah.
God restored the Jews to their land after 1,900 years of diaspora, and then he's going to restore them to their Lord when he comes back at the end of the tribulation period. And he's going to take the church out of here because we have nothing to do with God's chastening of Israel. That's why the rapture goes up before the tribulation begins.
We were talking before the radio program today, looking at a picture here between of Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, January 28th, 2020. Of course, they're both shaking hands here in this photo. But we had mentioned just how key Israel has been to America and America's greatness and things of that nature. But yet we see that Trump is out, Netanyahu is out
Within 16 months.
of each other. And now what is it, Gans,
Yeah.
Gatz,
An
whatever his name
absolute
is,
nobody.
is now, and I think Netanyahu is going to try to somehow cobble together from the Knesset some sort of consensus, coalition, a government here in the next few months, and who knows what will happen there, and then who knows what will happen in 2024 for that matter. But yeah, it is interesting to see how as Israel goes, America goes, or as America goes, Israel goes. And so I think Israel is the key, and of course, as America becomes a Jew-hating nation,
And point out why they were both booted out, because they're promoting that split nation, two-state solution.
they were promoting that
God
two-state
wasn't impressed
solution.
with it.
Absolutely.
And COVID broke out that very week, 8 days earlier.
That's right, and that's exactly right. This was January 28th, 2020. So on the other side of the break here on Politics in the Pulpit, we'll ask Evangelist Bill Grady just a few closing things as we come on to the other side of the break, and we'll see just what kind of a significant contribution Baptists had to the founding of our great country, and a few other little tidbits here. And please come back and listen right here on your hometown station, AM 1220 and 98.1 FM, your hometown station.
Accidents happen, but rest assured Patterson's Collision Center is here to help. Patterson's is a family-owned and operated collision repair facility providing the Santa Clarita Valley with premium collision repairs. Patterson's prides itself on being the only California-certified green repair shop in all of Santa Clarita. They are insurance claim specialists and even offer payment plans for your deductible. For personalized, friendly service, visit pattersonscollisioncenter.com or call 294-1011 and let Patterson's Collision Center help ease your worries today.
If you have brain fog, headaches, and mood swings, you might have post-concussion syndrome and need to learn the 3 most common mistakes that must change to allow your brain to heal for good. Hi, I'm Dr. Thomas Palucki, and WebMD chooses me as best chiropractor and functional medicine in Santa Clarita. Something to think about. So, when you're ready to get better, go to drpalucki.com. That's drpalucki.com to schedule your free consultation now.
Olive Terrace Bar and Grill is the hottest new Mediterranean fusion restaurant in Santa Clarita with unique delicacies like seafood right off the boat, mouth-watering prime steaks, artesian sandwiches, delicious pastas, and tasty kebabs. Unwind on their cozy outdoor patio at their weekend champagne brunch, full menu, and weekly specials at oliveterracebarandgrill.com. Check out their full bar and happy hour daily specials in Valencia on Copper Hill and Newhall Ranch Road by LA Fitness. Olive Terrace Bar and Grill, delicious food seasoned with love.
It's time to enhance your natural beauty at Hestia Medical Spa. Select from a large menu of services, including an assortment of fillers that can be used in the face, lips, hands, and a variety of other body parts. Get rid of that double chin with Kybella, an injectable treatment to permanently destroy fat cells under the chin. Hestia Medical Spa also offers Botox, Dysport, and Xeomin to help reduce severe frown lines. Experience rejuvenation at Hestia Medical Spa, located on Valencia Boulevard next to City Hall. Call 3434 or go online to hestiamedicalspa.com.
It's like no other station I've ever listened to. It's great.
Your hometown station.
Welcome back to Politics in the Pulpit. This is your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook, here on your hometown station, AM 1220 and 98.1 FM. We have in studio with us here Dr. Bill Grady. And again, if you are interested in one of Dr. Grady's books, please look on to Grady Publications online. You can grab Final Authority, What Hath God Wrought, Holy Ground, How Satan Turned America Against God, and his most recent book, Perilous Times, which we've just discussed here. If you would like to meet Dr. Grady, he will be at the Freedom's Way Baptist Church tonight in the city of Castaic at 7 p.m. Love you to come out and meet Dr. Grady. Dr. Grady, we were talking a little bit about your book earlier, How Satan Turned America Against God, and the cover of that book has a picture of an insidious individual grabbing a hold of the nation's capital, and it looks an awful lot like what happened on January 6th of 2021, but yet this book and that drawing came out in 2005. Tell us a little bit about How Satan Turned America Against God, and give us some high points about that book and why folks need to grab it.
Well, one of the more unusual things in the book is at the second to the last page of the book, right at the end, page 879. It's a little statement here trying to calm the people down after reading a scary book. At the very end, trying to remind them that God's in control. It says right here, from Osama to Obama, the Lord's got everything under control. He's got the whole wide world in his hands. That's Mahalia Jackson's old Southern gospel song. And from Osama to Obama. Now, anybody that can explain this, I'll give them a free book tonight if they come to the service. I'll give them the table that the books are on, if it's okay, Jerry. But if you can explain one thing, Mr. Obama got in the office in 2008. The copyright date is 2005. Now, what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is that preachers aren't necessarily as dumb as they look. Sometimes the Lord gives us a little bit of discernment. And I'll show you two interesting things about this book. You know, you mentioned Rush Limbaugh. He resisted conspiracy theories for years. He made fun of people that believed in any of it. Called them conspiracy kooks, and a kook test. But yet he spent the last 2 years of his life trying to unseat and expose the deep state. He was finally won over, right?
Yep.
Two quick illustrations. We all heard about the sneak attack on Pearl Harbor. Here's the front page headline of the largest paper in Hawaii, the Honolulu Advertiser. You were just in Hawaii last week. This is the front page headline the week before the attack. Pardon me, the week before the sneak attack. Right across the top, Japanese may strike over weekend. Here's the article, Hawaii troops alerted. 3 words right there. That's some sneak attack, isn't it?
I guess.
And then here,
7 days before it happened.
Page 905 in this book is a full page from the Federal Register. Reproduction, page 9097, sent to me by the Library of Congress Law Department. It's an article about a bank in New York that got busted in the middle of the war, money laundering for Mr. Hitler, the Union Banking Corporation of New York. Right here are the board members, 7 of them. The 4th one is Prescott Bush. That's 41's daddy.
That's 41's daddy.
A family that wouldn't spit on Trump but had no trouble keeping Mr. Hitler in office during a war. And that's that's the official record of the government.
That's a conspiracy theory, though.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. So there's plenty of material if people want to read it.
Yeah. Give us a quick 1.5 minute on the Georgia Guidestones.
Oh, the Georgia Guidestones, I guess everyone's heard of those things. I was just there just a short while ago, just two months ago. And there's a picture of the Georgia Guidestones in the book, but most folks have seen them by now. An esoteric, really weird, mysterious thing. And forever, nobody has supposedly known where it's come from. The man in the church I was just at, the Dunlap's church, that man who works with Chick, he said there's some documentary they've done now or is available. They think they trace down the origin of who did it.
Yeah.
For years, it was thought to be some Jesuits, and it's just basically something about world population control, 500 million people, keep like a new age, a new world, 10 Commandments type thing.
Sure.
And it's in several languages, just out in the middle of nowhere. It's in a field, nobody there. And I drove in and looked at it, drove away, and blew up, as most people know, at 4 o'clock in the morning a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
I think it was a couple of rednecks, probably.
Probably. Well,
Got tired of it.
Got tired of it. Another conspiracy that, of course, happens to be out in the open. The convenient thing about most conspiracies, they tend to be out in the open. Great Reset. World
Davos, Switzerland.
Davos, Switzerland, and Klaus Schwab, and all that. What do you think about the fact that it's so out in the open?
Yeah.
It somehow takes the effect of it being a conspiracy away, or the sting of that.
Sure it does.
But yet, it's still bold about its assertions.
Right. That's kind of because the professing Christians have become pretty watered down and worthless anymore. The time will come when they'll not endure. The remnant's very small, so the enemy is brazen. And it's almost like they don't have to hide anymore. You're right. And President Trump spoke at that committee.
World Economic Forum.
Yeah, he spoke there 2 days after the first COVID sign broke out. First COVID case broke in the Seattle area in a hospital, which was it was on January 20th, 2020. And then, 8 days before he made his big speech about the Palestinian two-state solution. But they put a microphone on him at Davos and asked him what he thought. He said, "It's just one man. We've got it under control. There's nothing to worry about." Meant well, positive leader, trying to put a positive spin, but, it was Martin Luther King Day, by the way, is when that first case hit, Monday, January 20th.
Dr. Grady, where are you going to be after you leave Southern California? Where are you heading afterwards?
Well, thankfully, I'm flying back to the Smoky Mountains Thursday. I'll be preaching in North Carolina the whole next week.
Oh, very
so
good.
I want to come out here once in a while.
Yeah, because you'll
Glad to be here.
Going back there where there's nice humidity, but over here with a nice dry heat.
I wish the folks in this area would visit your church one time. I've known Brother Cook for a long time. He's a strong leader, and his wife's one of the sweetest ladies in the area. And I hope you could get into his church sometime.
Well, I'm glad you put in a good plug there for my wife, Rita. I want to say thank you to not only Dr. Grady for being here today, but of course for authoring these great books. And again, if you're interested in any one of Dr. Grady's books, you can come tonight to Freedom's Way Baptist Church, or you can go to Grady Publications and pick up any one of these books at cost, and I'm sure you will be blessed greatly. Let me just remind you out there, the gospel is free. Jesus Christ paid the price for you. What does that mean? That means that God accepted Jesus Christ's death on the cross on your behalf. All the sins of the world were laid upon our precious Savior, and Jesus Christ died on your behalf. But that doesn't mean that you have a free ticket to heaven unless, of course, you grab hold of that ticket. You must come to faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. You must call upon Him and believe on Him, not just believe in an intellectual sense and just agree and assent to a bunch of content on a page or a chalkboard. But you got to come to Christ, and you got to trust Him. Are you trusting Him today? I hope you are trusting Him. I want to thank you today for listening to Politics in the Pulpit. And again, thank you to Dr. Bill Grady and his latest book, Perilous Times, Deep Truths for Shallow Waters. And again, he'll be at the Freedom's Way Baptist Church tonight at 7 p.m. and encourage you to come on out and listen to him. And again, thank you for listening. We're looking to see you guys next week. Same bat time, same bat channel here on your hometown station, AM 1220 and 98.1 FM, your hometown station. God bless you.